Welcome to the Gibson Gazette podcast, where everything in life is story. Story is how we share ideas, politics, vision, fantasies, experiences, even our hopes and dreams. The Gibson Gazette is a podcast show devoted to story. Those we consume, those we tell ourselves, and those told to us. Welcome. Well, everybody, for our very first show, we decided to let you get to know us. Both AMC and ILMG have very varied backgrounds and careers. We're both Gen Xers. We both I'll be 47 in less than a week. I'm not sure if my co-host wants to share her age. I'm not going to do that to her. But let's just
look at that, man. I look fab you know what I mean? I'm
there
good.
we
So
go.
I take
Yes.
mommy and daddy every day. I'm 46. I'll be 47 in May. Gemini power, baby.
Okay, there we go. A Capricorn and a Gemini should be a very interesting dynamic on this show. Most of you know me as L. Michael Gibson, and I'll let my co-host introduce herself.
And a lot of y'all know me as AMC, aka Soul Aphrodisiac on the internet. And do I have to give the whole, semi-profile thing, or you think they already, know the juice?
I
That should
mean,
be
you
enough.
could tell them a line or two of why they should listen to you, right? Because we're going to be giving a lot of opinions about a lot of things, and they're going to be like, well, "Who are these black folks? And why should we pay attention to anything they have to say?"
So true, so true. Okay, well, okay, guys, I have been doing this writing thing for a good 20 plus years. I've written for different publications in the US and in Canada. And I failed to mention that I am actually located in Toronto right now. I've lived in New York, excuse me. So that's a big part of me. And that's where I got to basically live and breathe everything that I love about music and networking and getting to know people and interviewing and doing all that good stuff. So I love culture, I love arts, I love music, and short form, that's what brought me here to LMG, because he is one of the dudes that I've always checked in on when I was like writing and doing my thing when I first started out. So the day that one hit me up and was like, I love your blog. And then the guy was like, LMG's telling me he loves my blog. I'm good. So that brought me here.
Well,
That's a short form.
thank you for agreeing to be my co-host. I have a 27-year career, I guess now 28-year career this year, in public health and community development and community mobilization work, writing and education. I am the founder of 4 or 5 different projects now, including a youth center in Cleveland, Ohio, a film festival I'm a co-founder of in Chicago, a Black Men of Size support group in Detroit, which now has chapters in other cities, and a youth program here in Merida, Mexico, where I reside, focused on Black history, culture, politics, with Black teenage expats. Yeah, I do a little bit of everything, but most people know me in the public sphere as a cultural and music critic. I was editor for soultracks.com for 11 years and worked with various publications for over 18 before I kind of retired from that role. So this is my foray back into the public sphere. We'll see how long it lasts. Hopefully it'll have as long of a run as my Soul Tracks run.
It will.
So
It will.
we decided to interview each other, narcissists that we are, for our first podcast show, and let you get to know a little bit about us, since you're going to be listening to us talk about our different opinions on things. And I think we've kind of already said we're both kind of trained as writers and journalists, worked in that space. Anne-Marie still works in that space in Canada, just got a brand new position. You could pop your collar for that. I don't know if you want to talk about that at all, or if you can with the people, Anne-Marie, before we go into our interview.
Thank you very much. And yes, I can. I am now the lead entertainment writer for BuyBlacks.com. And BuyBlacks.com is a wonderful site, and it's actually the leading website for Black content in Canada. Great interviews, great opinion pieces. It's a fantastic site, really and truly. So I'm really glad to be on board on the editorial side. I'm really excited about it. I know we always talk about 2022 being our creative year and jumping back into creative, and this was big for me. So first came the podcast. I manifested that, and then came this opportunity. I manifested that too. So we're doing good. We're doing really, really, really well so far.
I got some questions for you about all this manifestation stuff. I look forward to hearing your thoughts on that. All right, you can go ahead. I've talked a lot, so if you want to
All
be the
right.
first for a question, let me
All right.
go ahead and pull that up for you.
Okay. So
My very
tell
first
me.
question. Oh, you're gonna go first. All
The
right.
very first.
Oh, you want
I'm
to hear more
ready.
of my
I'm
voice? I thought the people were already bored with my voice. All right, go ahead.
So I want you to tell us a little bit about little LMG. Like, what did you want to be when you were little? Straight up. What did you want to be?
So there's two different questions there. So I'll go with a little bit about the little LMG. So before age 10, he was fairly joyful, quick to smile, creative, laugher, throwing shade. But I was also a little femme, somewhat bullied, and heavily, heavily churched. We went to church multiple days a week, choir rehearsal, noonday prayer, vocation Bible school, you name it, I was in it. And I spent a lot of time with my girl cousins during those years playing with Barbies and whatnot as a queer boy. And with my boy cousins, I would go to Saturday matinees at second run theaters that don't exist anymore to see martial art films. We'd have to sit Indian style because rats would run underneath our seats.
Oh my
And
God.
and this was like in all of the South Side of Chicago neighborhood theaters that have since been torn down, rightly so. But that was where we could go really inexpensively to go kind of see classic films. So after 10, I got hit by a car, and that summer gained like 45 pounds, and so I went from being like this Ethiopian thin child to a kind of a fat queer kid that got heavily bullied. But I also was like prematurely exposed to sex stuff, and so that I like knew way too much, and I used my access to pornography and comedy to protect my mind and body from the neighborhood kids, like in the gain some social standing. So I would crack jokes and I'll pop out the latest edition of Playboy or Hustler that the other kids couldn't get access to.
Look at you.
Yeah, I was that kid. I was corrupting the minds of other youth. That in order to fit in, right? Like I did not fit in. I spoke too properly for my neighborhood. I wasn't allowed to speak in proper English in the streets. My mom was always putting me in white spaces, so I could navigate those spaces later in life. I'm definitely a post-civil rights '80s baby in that regard. Born in the '70s, but '80s in my upbringing. And so there's a lot of that go with that, like trying to figure out how do you navigate the street life and the hood life that I was growing up in, while also being this good boy, church boy, clean cut kid everywhere else. We talk about stories, and so that's kind of a little bit my story. So the thing as a kid, I paid the most attention to, and this is kind of my dichotomy, were comic books and soap operas as a child, and I was religious about both things from age 5 to 19, and then at 19 I decided I was no longer going to invest in stories that had no ending. And this was back in the day. The soap operas, like
I have to
never ended. Like,
what's your favorite soap from back in the day?
So I was a big All My Children person, but then I became weirdly obsessed with Guiding Light. I had found like the 50th anniversary book in the 80s and read it from cover to cover. And so this leads to the answer to your question. What I most
Yeah.
wanted to be for a really long time was a soap opera writer.
Operator.
Like I either wanted to be a comic book artist or a soap opera
Whoa,
writer because those were the two things I was most obsessed with as a kid. I mean that
that is
changed.
hilarious. I
Yeah,
love
yeah,
that.
that changed about 14 or 15, but those were the things I most wanted to be as a kid growing up. Very, very weird. All right, your
No
turn.
way. Oh my God. We're so bonded over the soap operas and the comics, actually. Oh my, because of my brother, I was a big comic head too. So yeah, we would have definitely had a ball as kids, honestly.
I was obsessed
God,
with X-Men. I wanted to be Storm so bad.
listen, she was bad.
All right.
Oh
So
my
your
God.
turn. What's one of
Okay.
your what's one of your passions and what's your earliest memory experiencing that passion?
Huh. I'm a pretty passionate person. I would say, and it may sound cliche, but it really, really isn't. It would be a toss up between writing and music. On the writing end, it would be my English teacher. I had an English teacher. Lord help me. I hope I don't start to cry. Um, there's a whole like story behind this that hopefully I'll get to share at some point. But right now, because he passed away, he meant a lot to me. You know, when you always have that one teacher who made a difference, it was this guy here. And he introduced me to Maya Angelou.
Oh wow.
So in grade 11, we actually had an excerpt from I Know What a Caged Bird Sings in our provincial exam. So I was queen essay chick. I love to write an essay. I would always spit out the gems every year. I loved, loved, loved his classes. So when he literally brought me the book and he said, read this, I think you'd love it. I went through that book like water. It was fantastic. And then I couldn't stop. And everything was Maya, Maya, Maya to me. Um, Best to fast forward to like present day, one of the best gifts that my parents ever got me was me being able to go and see her. So I love my Angelou with all my heart, and it was because of this teacher, and that really was the catalyst for me to be like, oh my God, writing and words and the power, everything was just amazing to me, and I loved it. Um, and I wrote for
Mm.
the school paper and stuff. I did all of that stuff too. So, uh,
Okay. Wait,
and
wait, hold
then
on though. Like, so you said you got a chance to meet her though, right?
say that again.
You said you got a chance to meet her.
You know what? It was a quick thing because when she had finished her show, um, she was supposed to do a meet and greet, but she was sick. She had a little cold, and so she decided to actually nix the meet and greet. But I'm slick like that, so I kind of ran up to the elevator where she was going into, and boy, when I tell you her bodyguard stopped real quick, I was like, I stopped in my tracks. But she was like, "It's okay, it's okay," and I got to like, at least say hi and how are you? How are you feeling? Just the fact that I got to say that to her was enough for me. And she looked at me and she smiled and she goes, "You have so much soul." And soulful has always stuck with me. Like a lot of people have labeled me as being a soulful person, and I think that was sprinkled onto me by Auntie Maya.
Oh, that's awesome. So
Yeah, I
I have
really.
a brief Maya. I met Maya. Um, I was like maybe 19 or 20. I was waiting tables at a restaurant called Kramer Books and Afterwards Cafe in Washington D.C., which is an iconic restaurant bookstore slash bookstore that also used to play live music. Um,
Mhm.
I think it's still there, and I worked there for like 6 years off and on. I would always like quit and come back, but anyway, Maya came in during the day and with a little friend of hers, and I guess she already knew the bartender manager who was there for the
Mhm.
day shift, and he shut down the bar for Maya, and it was just Maya by herself during the day with her best
Wow.
friend, and they sat there and they had cocktails for the entire afternoon and got smashed.
Oh,
Of course,
yeah.
I went up and I spoke to her, and she was wonderfully gracious and hilarious. And her little friend was a trip. One of my, I think, was one of my family. But it was an awesome experience getting a chance to meet her. So yeah, I have my little Maya story. And that was
Yeah.
my first Maya book. I Know Why the Cage Bird Sing. Freshman year, or maybe even sophomore year English, was when we
Mhm.
had it. So awesome. All right, your turn.
I am gonna go for what was your first job? And
Okay. Mm.
I'm gonna ask if it was a precursor to what you do today.
Okay. So I had to prepare for this one because I had to really think about it. Because I think that the way that your question came off was that it was a little bit more focused on um, like my professional career. And then I started thinking about it, that's actually not my first job. So my
Mhm.
first job was working as a counter clerk in my stepfather's family's liquor store on 63rd Street in Chicago, so on Chicago South Side, a very rough neighborhood. I was allowed to sell everything but liquor because I was 6 years old when I started.
I was just about to.
I was 6 years old. I was 6 years old. There was a little TV back there. Like, so it was kind of this very narrow, long hallway, and there's like candy there and cigarettes. Well, cigarettes there, candy there, and then and right in the corner was the TV. So I would sit there and watch cartoons on Saturdays and after school old films in between customers. And I called my dad whenever my stepfather whenever I had to ring somebody up for liquor because I could make change for anything but liquor because liquor you have to be an adult. So I got mostly paid in quarters to play the video games that were in the store. So they actually got the money right back off of me, right? Candy, and every summer, like we went to Great America, which is now Six Flags. And so
Right.
that was like that trip got paid for, and I got like a ton of money that I could spend on that trip. And so that was what they paid me. So that was essentially slave labor for children.
Oh no,
And
don't you were a very enterprising young man. Okay.
I mean, I didn't really have a choice. It was the family's liquor store. This is where my dad had to be, or my stepfather
Yeah.
had to be after work and, during after school and on Saturdays. And so those were the day times that I worked there. And I did that until my mother and him separated when I was 9. Soon after that, I had a newspaper paper route. Um, but neither was a precursor to what I do today. But they did teach me the necessity of work, right? To get what you want. Like if you want something, you have to work for it. And that kind of fits my Capricorn persona, right? Then I've always known to work for more. I've known more work than leisure, shall we say, in my life.
Mhm. It's funny that you had just said what was it that you said there? Um oh my gosh, not even the working aspect. You know what? I'll come back to it because there was something that you said particularly, and it triggered something. But I'll come back to that.
All right. So you, my lady, let's
Yes,
go
sir.
with what? Well, I wonder if this is going to be the same answer. You let me know if I can. I'll switch to a different question. What
Okay.
novel? What novel or nonfiction work completely changed your life and outlook?
It is not the same answer. It
Okay.
will not be. No. Uh, you know what? In my late teens, I was very much into Alice Walker.
Mm,
And yeah, I really love between Alice Walker. No, no, it was mostly Alice Walker. Um, and the book that really got me at that point was Possessing the Secret of Joy. So
okay.
I know it was really it was heavy. It was heavy. It's about female genital mutilation. If
I'm
nobody
aware.
is aware, but I was really, really drawn into the characters, and more so Tashi because she was like totally going crazy, right? So the relationships, the turmoil, the her relationship with her husband, like everything. There were just so many things, and I haven't read it in a very long time, and I keep on saying I need to pick it up again because it was a book that was really shocking to me, but at the same time, it opened up my eyes to a lot that I had no idea was going on around me or outside of, the spectrum that I live in. So it's always good to kind of get, your antenna up and feel out, because I'm one, I start to read something, if I don't understand it or I don't know about it, I'll start researching like a crazy person. So then I started getting into reading about mutilation and the trauma and psychology, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I want to be a psychologist. And then it kind of ingrained that it was the catalyst for me, and I actually, going into college, I started as a psych major. I was given a bursary by one of the women's auxiliary chapters in our community, and I went to an all white Italian school, by the way. And um, but I graduated. They gave me my bursary. I went in. I did 1 year. I said, "Nah, man, I ain't doing this shit." And that dream went down the hill, and I'm a writer today. There you go. That's how that
Wow.
ended.
Yeah, it's usually a class or two that ends up forcing writers to become writers. I am awful at math, and
Hello,
even from both my undergraduate degree and graduate degrees are in things that require the least amount of math possible in order to
sir.
earn my credential.
What are you telling? I'm an English lit major, and I remember that year I took I think it was like a business something, a few business classes, and they looking at me talking about, oh, you had to do accounting too. I said, I barely passed accounting one. Y'all are asking for a lot. It took me 3 tries to pass that damn class. I'll never forget that. I said, I'm not
uh,
doing anything accounting wise ever again in life. It's not going. But now I own my own business. Oh, that's great.
there you go. There you go. But
That's
that's what you hire your
horrible.
accountants for.
Yes, indeed. And have a great one.
All
It's
right, your
crazy.
turn.
My turn. What do I have here? As you know, like I clearly stalked you before we knew each other, and you have a beautiful relationship with words. I always had enough respect for your pen. Um, what was the initial moment for you where you were just like, "Yep, I'm gonna be a writer. This is it for me. I'm not looking back. Let's do this."
Well, first of all, thank you for the compliment. I am one of those people who are always haunted by elementary and middle school teachers telling my mom repeatedly, he's not living up to his potential. And so I am always someone thinking that I need to be doing more to live up to my potential. So I'm always very grateful and humbled by any compliments around my work. Being introduced to Baldwin at age 18 made me want to be a novelist, and a year or two later, being introduced to cultural critics like Nelson George, Lisa Jones, and Greg Tate taught me that I could have a voice as a cultural critic and that my opinion could matter. Really, before those writers, I hadn't thought about that in that way. I always thought of, critics as being some kind of elite people who went to elite schools and from elite backgrounds, right? And they told me it didn't have to be that. I also cannot underestimate what it meant to be in an on and off again intimate relationship with R&B and jazz critic James Jones IV, who was the R&B and jazz critic for USA Today. He was also a stellar upright bass man, and I used to sing jazz in his quartet back in the day.
Excuse me, what? Pardon? Let me go back and say that again.
I sung
You said
jazz in his quartet for about a year. Um,
go
and
revisit that.
we were together off and on from age 18 until his death when I was 21. He was in his early 30s, but he was also from very humble beginnings from Detroit and had earned a master's degree and rose to become like this premier critic of black music at an internationally read newspaper. And he and
Mhm.
I would have like these deep philosophical debates about music and artists. And he respected what I had to say and thought I had something to say. And sometimes I would pen stuff. And he'd often comment that he thought I was a more naturally gifted writer than he was because he had to work really hard at the writing part of cultural criticism. And
Mhm.
that encouraged me greatly to at least give it a try. And, you know, some 18, 20 years later.
This is true.
Actually longer than that when I think about the James influence. Um, yeah, I got to be that. But it would be a minute. Like he died when I was 21 and I didn't really start writing. I worked for like Queer Press for about the
Mhm.
next 5 years, but I didn't start working for like mainstream media or music media until I was about 27. So that actually has been exactly 20 years.
Okay. All right. Wow. You are just a ball of surprise.
Hey, look, we said this show is going to be about stories, so
It's
I gotta
very
I
true.
gotta be willing to tell a few of my own, right?
Of course. And you know we're gonna dig deep as we go. So definitely. Definitely. You're up. You're up.
So I'm gonna jump around just for time because I recognize we've been going at it for a minute.
Okay.
Uh, you are a mother. So finish
Mm.
this sentence. The most rewarding and challenging thing about being a mother these days are.
Mm. Mm. Uh, the most rewarding and challenging things about being a mother these days are rewarding the unconditional love that I'm greeted with every single day. Oh my God, I love this kid. He's a mini me. He can be an ass when he wants to be. I mean, that's all me. Um, he's absolutely amazing. He's intelligent. He's quirky. I could go on. Okay, so I won't. But I love my boy, and he's just absolutely awesome. And the challenging thing I would say that I grapple with every day is the balancing act and the constant battle to ensure, like, in my mind and in my psyche, that everything is all right with him. I want to support him, love and nurture him in the best way possible, and keep him safe in these nasty, trying times. It's so hard. I've had so many conversations with white moms that, understand, allies that get it, where I'm like, I have to sit down with my child when he gets to a certain age and explain to him the differences between, John and you. Like, there are big differences, and you're going to have to learn how to maneuver in certain circumstances. So, that shit is hella challenging. I won't even lie. I just the thought of it sometimes it makes my stomach turn. The fact that I have to sit down and have that talk.
How old is the
But
baby?
he's 4 now. He's
Ah,
4. He's
oh,
4. Got a mouth like what? But he's 4. He's
that's
my boss.
awesome.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
if that's happening at 4, good luck on the next 14.
The first one to tell me that, and all I could do is sigh. My nephew is 18, so yeah, he keeps on telling me the same thing. But I think we'll do well. I think we'll be all right.
Awesome.
Yes, sir. So
Your turn.
I got something for you. What is your all-time love? So, what ranks as number one on your list? Music or theater?
Mm. So that's tough. As I
I
have
see.
revealed, I
I
used to
know.
sing. I used to sing all the time, and I grew up with my mother singing all the time too. My mother had a beautiful voice, she had perfect pitch.
Mm,
And church, like black folks in church, she was a church singer. So music was so powerful to me that it could dictate my mood. Like, if whatever mood was the song, that would be my mood. So if I played up tempo stuff and upbeat stuff, I'd be happy. If I played some sad, mournful stuff, I would be in the blues. And in the soundtrack, the first 30 or 40 years of my life, theater doesn't have the same heritage for me in that way. But it is an undeniable passion. My first legit play was August Wilson's The Piano Lesson at the
mm,
Goodman Theater in Chicago with the original Broadway cast on their national tour. Charles Dutton, and essentially it was the cast of Rock. For those who remember the TV show Rock on Fox, like,
Yeah, yeah.
that was almost everybody that was in the piano lesson that I saw that day on stage. And the original Broadway cast, or actually no, the national tours for the musicals Me and My Girl and Les Mis. Both when I saw all three of these shows when I was age 14. And I wanted to be involved in theater ever since. Like after that, that was, I was like, soap opera writing is cute, but it would be really great to be on stage. Like, and while my love affair with music, admittedly, has waned in the last 5 years, you and I've talked privately about that a lot. And I'm comfortable not being involved in music after having been a singer, a songwriter, a manager of other artists, and perhaps most notably a critic. I still have to say my relationship to the theater or wanting to be part of theater in some way hasn't gone away. Like I still either want to be a playwright or a director of community theater. Like that itch is still there. So, I'll eventually get it scratched. Uh, but yeah, theater has endured where music has been harder to stay as committed to in the way that I was for most of my life.
Mhm,
So, what
mhm.
about you? I mean, I'm gonna turn that question a little bit around on you, even though that's not the question I have for you. How are you around
um,
music these days?
uh, I think we're kind of in the same boat. For me personally, I noticed that when I had my son, well, first of all, when I had my son, I went through postpartum depression,
Mm.
and it's funny because I wasn't playing music at all, and it only dawned on me. You're aware of Will Dawson. Um, I don't. I think you
Hmm.
know
I
him,
know Will
and
Dawson,
he's a good
an
friend of
amazing
mine, and
storyteller in his own right, who's doing
sure
things out in
is.
California these days.
He sure is. He's out there doing his thing. But he was over visiting, and he looked around, and he looks at me and he goes, "There's no music playing. What's going on with that?" And that's honestly when it dawned on me, and I was like, "Huh." Because he knows. I mean, we'd spend nights running around in Harlem singing all night long, running up and down blocks, and I mean, he was my music, partner in crime. So he knew that something just it wasn't right, right? So for a while, I just wasn't tapped into the music scene like that, and I was okay with it. And then when I started hearing all of these sing-songy, really just dragging my feet kind of chicks and dudes throwing sex and all kind of thing, listen, man, I like my music a certain way, So we'll get into that conversation, I'm sure, at
Right,
some point.
right.
But
Hmm.
yeah, it stuff became watered down for me, and I was like, it's a good thing I'm not critiquing anything right now because I'd just be slandering everything. So it would be a good idea for me to step back and just kind of tune out for a little bit, and that's what I did. I think the first review that I've done lately, I just did the Weekend's review. I don't like the Weekend,
Mm.
and that album kind of did it for me, where I was like, okay, well, certain things can run, and it's not
Meaning that
all.
you liked the album or you didn't like the album?
I liked the sonic play. I loved the instrumentation because it was very 80s. It's very Depeche Mode. I was very
Mm.
much into Depeche back in the day. I love the 80s pop synth sound. So that pulled me in. I hate his struggle voice. I hate the fact that he tries to perform live. I hate these things. So
Hate is
I
such a
just
strong word. I mean, wow,
it
hate.
really is. That's why I'm using it, LMG.
Wow. Okay. And people think I'm a tough critic. That was the reputation I had, but you've been hiding in the wings really stealthily and not letting people see how tough a critic you are. That's interesting. So I'm actually going to ask you a question on our list.
Okay.
I'm going to probably narrow this down to just two questions left in order
Mhm.
to kind of make sure we have enough space. to also
Okay.
talk about what people can expect from the show moving forward. Because this is our own self indulgent little thing. This is not going to be the show. um,
Sure.
uh, so you're one of these 5 or 10 year planners, like with vision boards and whatnot, or because I've heard you a couple of times speak about manifesting. So, what are your thoughts on manifesting what you want? And are you one of these folks who do all of the things,
All of the things.
all of the
I,
things, the vision board, the 5 to 10 year plan, the whole thing?
no lie, I really am. I am a vision board girl. However, that long haul 5 to 10 year thing, that ain't working for me. There are 365 days in one year. That's long enough. You know what I mean? Like a year, a lot of transition can happen in one year. But I do love to sit down and do the vision board thing. And when it's not an option, I write things down. I really truly believe more so in writing things down with intention, because I feel like you're more committed to it, and you see you tend to be more accountable when it's written down on paper. You're like, you see it, it's there, and you must do it or you must follow through. I'm really, really big on manifesting. I think that whatever you put into the universe, you can get back tenfold. I just need people to understand that it doesn't work with, hey, I need $1 million, and then it comes back to you. That's not how it works.
What?
You need,
So, what's the point? I need my lotto win.
well, you and I would have both been sitting on that mound a long time ago. I just, people need to realize that it's part universe, part diligence, and part sweat. You know what I mean? There's got to be some work behind that. But yeah, I'm really, really big on the manifestation part.
So, in full transparency, I took my first manifestation class ever
Hmm.
this last summer, and
Had it
an amazing teacher. Shout out to Kathy and her partner Marcy. They both are amazing people, and they they taught, but it was really Kathy's class, and she taught us about it. And I'm a Capricorn, and I am also somebody who is, I don't want to say lapsed in my Christian faith, but I'm certainly not a devout adherent in the way that I was raised to be. Um,
Mhm.
Grandmama would have called me a backslider right about now. um, and part of that is a healthy skepticism about everything happening for a reason and everything they're working for the good. When
Mhm.
I so my skepticism about manifesting, I was like, so what? The people who were in famines, they just didn't manifest enough food. Like, it felt very Western privileged
Yeah.
thinking. But in working with Kathy, she was able to help me get a little bit past that part of my thinking of it, and the secret that wasn't a secret, right? And think more about how many things in my life have I spoken into existence and worked on and actually
Mhm.
made happen, right?
You
And
see the balance there,
that
yeah.
I've consistently and repeatedly did, even without knowing I was doing it all the time.
Mhm.
And so that part of it doesn't feel so woo woo to me, and I can get with. Um,
Mhm.
I do think that if you work on something and you put forth an idea. I also like the gratitude piece of it. That does speak to my Christian heritage, and
Mhm.
just taking some space out of the day to give thanks for all of the things that are working in my life and are beautiful in my
Yeah.
life. That feels
Yeah.
uh, necessary. I've been an incredibly privileged person. I joke about the fact that I'm a street kid made good. People learn more about my story as we go throughout the show, but the reality is that, like, I have beat so many statistical odds that it's
Mhm.
not even funny. And so I can't. That was also the thing that kept me from being an atheist or 100% agnostic, because there's just too many things in my life that have worked out that shouldn't have statistically contextually worked out, right? Like,
Right.
grace was definitely sufficient. So yeah, so that is, so I was curious because I know you have talked a lot about manifesting in our calls and wanted to know, like, how much of that was real for you. So thank you
It's
for
really
sharing.
real. You're
All right.
welcome. That's big. We have time for like one more.
So I'm
One more
thinking we
question.
both do one more. Well, you have two more for me, but I have one more for you for sure.
Okay. Let me pick. Okay, you're an old school, and I say old school with quotes. Yeah, old school journalist. I mean, yeah, we're the same age, so I'm not no,
Look, I
no.
work with teenagers who told me that they were born in like 2009.
Oh, I mean,
Right, right.
don't you
So
love when they call you sir? And like, I know it's
I
Miss
mean, the
Ma'am. I hear.
sir and all of that doesn't bother me. I started working with kids when I was hands on directly with teenagers, very young. So and to I was old to them when I was 30. Right, I was already Uncle Mike
Yeah,
at 30. So to now I'm practically Methuselah. So I don't expect them to view me that in that way. But it is hard to realize when people are talking about they were born and they were children during your 30s, right? Like that's
yeah,
just impossible to
yeah.
wrap your head around sometimes.
Really quick story about this old stuff. So one day I hitched up on some. I've turned into a Twitch crazy person. Love Twitch. When you find your DJs there and the music, and it's a great platform. No commercial, no ad. Just letting y'all know this. But so I hitched up in a room, and it was a room with all of my old school Montreal cats that I, grew up with, and I was very much a community kid. I did a lot of community work, etc., etc. So apparently, I was talking with one of them in the chat, and the DJ was somebody that I used to be a counselor for in camp. So when I started talking about different things back in the day, he goes, "What you know about that? What you know about that? What you know about that?" And everybody's like, "Oh, you don't know who this is?" I'm like, "Oh snap! What is going on here?" This guy is in his like, I think he's in his late 20s, early 30s now.
Oh wow.
So that made me feel hella old because I was like, wow, that must have been around when I was in my 20s, early 20s. So imagine I stumbled on somebody on Twitch that I used to count. That is nuts to me.
That's
But
awesome.
back to your
Um,
question.
hmm
So you know about how to have a how to use handheld recorders with cassettes. I mean, they have them digitally now, but we used to use cassettes back in the day, and the pen and paper, and just doing it old school. So, what's something that you like to do, still like to do, the old-fashioned way?
Sex. No, let me
Any
stop. Though I am pretty vanilla in my sex, I've taken the test about kinks and fetishes, and people are always really mad that I'm not like really into that stuff. I'm very vanilla. Anyway, that was way too much information, and not the answer that I've developed for this question.
I
Um,
bet you anything somebody's gonna
right, but it was
ask.
the first thing that came to me. You know, we got to have some spontaneity here.
Uh,
No, so I still buy physical media. So it's a running joke. So for people who haven't already picked up, I'm a black expat now. I'm originally from Chicago. I've lived in 7 different cities and now 3 different countries. And I've landed in Merida, Mexico. And I moved here with like a 30-foot truck, and most of that truck was physical media. Like I literally told the people who were packing my truck, I was like, this physical stuff, this media, these books, this music, these DVDs, these Blu-rays are first
mhm.
after the bedroom. Like anything after that we can squeeze in, but this stuff is my things, right? Like all of the money I've invested over all of the years has been in these things. So I still buy physical books and CDs, DVDs, Blu-rays, and that's considered old school now. Like I was shocked when
Yeah.
I moved here, and most of the expats here don't have Blu-ray players or DVD players. Um,
Mhm.
they all stream. And even if I like may watch or listen to something through streaming, because like I have Spotify and Audible, I still want to have a physical copy of the best of those works.
Mhm.
And or if I just want to support the artist, because I know that streaming isn't going to get them what that money in their pocket could.
Right.
So Yeah, so I still buy, and that's probably the most old school thing about me. And it's sad because there's no one I have asked. No one in my family wants the stuff when I die. Like, I went to my baby brother. I was like, you get this huge collection, this Linden. I actually do a lending library here in Merida, because there's no way for me to ever read all of the books that I have. I'm one of those people who buy more books than I could ever
You
read.
should do that.
So I do a lending library here, and I was gonna do it for my film library as well, but again, nobody really has Blu-ray players or DVD players. So I talked to my baby brother. I was like, "Yo, I'm thinking about the will and thinking about what I'm gonna leave people." And he's like, "I don't, want that stuff. I'm trying to downsize. I'm going minimalist." I'm like,
Ah,
so I'm gonna end up donating all of this stuff to like the English speaking library here in Merida because that's like maybe the only space that won't reject all of my things.
oh my god, that is hilarious. Now you got
Yeah.
me thinking because I'm like, oh, I keep on saying, oh, I'm going to leave my record collection and my CD collection. I got over like
They
200.
don't want that stuff.
Where are they going to go? What's my kid
They
going to do
really
with that?
don't.
Baby, what the hell is this, mom? I'm here sitting like, oh, I'm going to leave it for him. He's going to love it. He don't even know what to do with it. God
They don't
damn.
want any parts of it. It just feels heavy. I mean, look, I spent a fortune moving my stuff down here, so it is extra and heavy. But like you say, I'm old school. I'm old fashioned in that way.
Exactly. That's your
All
thinking.
right.
Yes.
So for you, I
Yes, sir.
have. Um, I'm actually going to ask you two questions. So one because I think it's important for the people who are watching the podcast or listening to the podcast to get a feel of this for you about you. So, what
Mm.
aspects about your personality or taste would you say are informed by being Canadian, and what aspects are informed by your West Indian heritage? And then I'll ask you your final question.
Woo, that's a loaded one. That's
Hey, well, you want the people to get to know you, right?
for sure. And I will say, first and foremost, everything is informed by my West Indian heritage. I'm not even gonna lie. There's no way because my parents. I have an older brother. There's four of us, honestly, but my older brother and I were the ones that were raised together. And my parents were very big into introducing and instilling the West Indian culture. Um, Big ups to my Lucian people, Sakafet, and morals and food and everything. Like, and I was also exposed to, and I don't even know if this is Canadian, and this is the problem that we have here. There are a lot of being black in Canada studies because we cannot tell you what it's like to be black Canadian
Mm.
because there's nothing that we can really associate with that except for a lot of just negative experiences, if you will. And then I can start getting into society's perception and school disengagement, youth incarceration, racial profiling, all of that.
Sounds like
And
America.
sure does, doesn't it? There's so many conversations to be had. Don't let like pretty little hello, bonjour, sweet little Canada fool you. Canada's a great country, but there's a lot of shit bubbling underneath. I mean, they don't even know how to treat their own people, their own Inuit people. Anyways, I'm not going to even start. So there's just so much to be said, and there's a lot to unfold there. But honest to God, my personality and tastes are very much Caribbean, and y'all will hear it because there's sometimes I'll be like, hey, and things will just come upon me that are very Caribbean like. So, the vernacular might change a bit, but y'all will get it. You'll get it. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. So I'm
And,
going to ask you your last question and then you can ask me mine. If
mm,
everything in life is story, what's your favorite story to tell?
ooh. What's my favorite story to tell? There's so many beautiful stories to tell. Okay, I'm gonna make like an amalgamation here. So there's beauty in both big and small things in life. That Black culture is it, y'all. It's it. It's not going anywhere. Contrary to a lot of complainers out there, it's it. And we, this blackness, this beautiful blackness, as a diaspora, we're unstoppable. That's it. That's all. Those are my stories. Those are the
That's your
favorite
favorite
stories.
story to tell.
Yes, because I think that a lot of our culture and being and everything parlays into every single thing that happens every single day on this earth. It doesn't matter what kind of perspective you take it from, there's still a little dabble, even if it's point 0.5 of blackness in it. It bothers me when I'm sitting and I'm watching a commercial in Canada with a whole bunch of white people in it going, "You go, girl!" No, 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 we don't go.
I mean,
So things like that are vernacular, and there are just a lot of things that are pulled from Black culture that are undeniable. It's us. We're the foundation.
I agree. We're the foundation, and I agree that Black culture is the leaders of culture globally, right? Like, 'cause we're the leaders of global culture. But I
It
do think
is.
that there's a little bit. I'm gonna push back a little bit, and this is probably gonna be
Go ahead.
specific. This is gonna be very consistent with our show. Um, so we on one hand we love the fact that we're the global leaders of culture,
Hmm.
and that we can look at almost anything that's popular in media and, as you pointed out, see a seed of blackness or antecedent of blackness in it. Even things that aren't necessarily considered black, like rock or country. Um,
Right.
Thinking about music, or even like pioneering theater, like in advancements in theater. Some of that also owes a debt to blackness, and black writers and creatives.
Hmm.
Um, but we also, on the same token, hate the fact that everybody else borrows from it and wants to emulate it and wants to copy it and wants to like imitate it. Like that's what it is to be the leader. Right? Like, is that people are gonna want to be like you. Um, and I get the social political aspect of it, right? Everything but the burden, right? They want
Right.
all
Right.
aspects of us, our lips, our
Right.
butts, our breasts, our our sex, our music, our language, but none of the burden. And so I do get that part of it, but there's almost like an anger and resistance around the idea that so many people um, do borrow, do appreciate, and there's a difference between appreciation and
Okay.
appropriation, right?
Yes.
Um, and not always the people who are taking or borrowing or emulating respect that difference. So I get that, but I also am always like, well, you want them to not like our stuff, right? Because we've been there. You want them not to see our stuff because we've been there too, and we didn't like
Yeah.
it. We didn't like when our stuff wasn't promoted. We didn't like when our stuff wasn't given same platforms as white stuff, and
Hmm.
wasn't valued. Um, and so, there's a tension there that I don't always think we respect uh, when we have this kind of conversation. But and that's the kind of thing you can expect to get from the Gazette podcast. All right, your last question for me.
Last question. Da, da, da. Okay, I'm gonna swing it a little. I'll swing it back to some music theater kind of thing. So,
Okay.
what was the last concert slash, if you can even remember that far,
I
concert
looked it up
slash
when you
music?
asked me. When you sent me the question in advance, I looked, so people have the question because we didn't want to sound stupid on our first podcast show.
Of course not.
So we totally prepared for this. Um, yeah, I remember the last artist I saw before the pandemic, and what I would see post pandemic. So
That's
I'll
right.
answer this. The Post pandemic, I would see Silk Sonic in a heartbeat. I actually may fly myself from Merida to Houston just to see that show. I love that album so much. It's one of my
Yeah.
favorite albums of 2021. It speaks to me as a Gen Xer. I also love Anderson .Paak. I don't care what anybody says. Bruno Mars can sing his face off. And yeah, like I would go see Silk Sonic in concert
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
in the pandemic, because we're not even in post pandemic, right? Like them Silk
That is
Sonic is definitely
true.
going to go on tour this year, and they are not going to care about no Omicron. The
Sure.
last concerts I saw live pre pandemic were Anthony Hamilton's last tour and PJ Morton's Paul tour. And I saw them both November
Wow.
2019. I looked it up. And I remember the show with Anthony because I was disappointed, and I'm never disappointed in Anthony live. I normally love Anthony Hamilton live. I've seen him several times. He's never disappointed me. But it
And
was
you
his
go,
last date on his tour.
yeah.
The background singers had to do some heavy lifting because his voice wasn't in full voice. He was exhausted. He had been on a
Yeah.
tour, a multi-city tour. It was the last show of that tour, and they tried their best efforts. You could definitely see when people are giving their all. But I have seen Anthony before, and I've seen him be transcendent, and this was not a
Mhm.
transcendent show. PJ, on the other hand, who I have grown in appreciation and admiration for. I used to love him as a studio artist, but I didn't necessarily like his live shows when he first hit. And I've been a PJ Morton fan since like his very first album, before most people even knew who he was, and interviewed him and wrote about him very, very early in his career. But live, vocally, his band would be killing, but his vocals were just okay. And I'm a vocal snob, so but PJ, the last 2 or 3 times I saw him, has completely upped his game vocally. And he gave me one of the best shows I saw of that year. He murdered it. He
Wow.
murdered the stage. And I mean, I had wrote something. I'd seen him with, God, who were the people? Lettucey and Kirk Franklin. They were all on tour together. PJ opened, and that show
Good.
was one of the best shows I've ever seen in my life. Like they
Wow.
all three, I didn't even think I wanted to see Kirk Franklin.
Right. Right. That's
Yeah, because I was
so
like, what do I do to Kirk Franklin? You know what I'm saying? What do I do to Kirk Franklin show?
you didn't
And
want
and it didn't even matter. He's such a consummate entertainer. He's all
to
over
looks
that
like it.
stage. He's like old school Sammy Davis Jr., old school James Brown. Like he is a showman. And
Hmm.
he was incredible. And Let Us See got like emotionally moved in the show, singing a song about her dad. And PJ had opened and he had just like crushed it. So there wasn't a false note. Like everybody in that show brought it. And I wrote about it, and PJ responded. Like Let Us See had shared it because I'm associate with Let Us See, and she shared it and with PJ and with Kirk, and they both responded to me directly. And I was like, oh, wow. But one of the things I said was exactly what I've said on the show, which is that I wouldn't have recommended anybody see PJ live before, but I definitely would recommend people see PJ live after
Yeah,
seeing that show. He had grown so much.
that's awesome.
So, yeah, PJ Morton, if you get a chance, definitely go see him. Anthony Hamilton was having an off night. Definitely still go see Anthony Hamilton.
He's on
Even though I
tour
didn't love
now.
his last album, he
He's
probably,
with
yeah.
Maxwell and Joe on tour, so go catch
There you
that,
go.
yo.
Anthony
Hmm.
Hamilton with Maxwell and Joe. Yeah, that's so. Are guys even allowed to buy tickets to that show? I'm not.
Let me tell you
Is this
something.
like
I
one of those
saw
old Teddy
Joe.
Pendergrass shows where they, only
That's
women and they?
exactly what. Listen to me. The way that I
Yeah.
saw people on over Joe, I was shocked. Like shocked. I felt like I was at a TP concert. I was turning around. These women were losing their minds. Joe just walked on stage with a glass in his hand, and people were losing their minds. And he had a great show. He's fantastic, but I just could not wrap around my brain how, how, and why. I get the why. He's fantastic. He's fantastic, but it freaked me out. So that's screaming for Maxwell, screaming for Joe, and then you have Anthony Hamilton with all of his listen. Mm-mm. That concert's
I
gonna be a
mean,
problem.
never don't underestimate those artists that were kind of mid tier, but still managed to have had 30-year careers. You know, I one of my favorite shows of 2019 was I went to it was Brandy and Neo. I went to go see Brandy. I did not go to see Neo. I'll be honest. I went to go see Brandy. Brandy actually wasn't in good voice. Well, she sung with a track, which I hate track shows.
Yeah.
Um, and I was like, Brandy, why are you why are you giving me a track date? Why are you giving me a track date at Aretha Franklin Amphitheater? You know, because it was outside, it was big arena, like girl, track date.
Mm.
So I was very disappointed about that. Neo, who I did not come to really see, gave me one of the best shows. Like he slayed, he
He's
danced and
awesome.
sung his way
Yes.
through hit after hit. I knew every song. Was surprised at how many songs I knew, and it was just like, I mean, it isn't that I didn't like him before, but like you say, you know, there's artists that you like, oh, I gotta go see, and there are artists that are like, oh, they're on the ticket, that's cute, and he was like,
Right.
on the cute. It wasn't like, oh, I gotta go see. Now I would go see Neo anytime.
Neo
He
sucks.
has
Yeah,
a
I love
phenomenal
Neo.
show.
I agree with that. I haven't seen him lately, but I saw him a few times previously, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. But I'm a big fan of his as well. Brandy is a whole other discussion.
Oh. Well, we're not gonna do it. We're not coming for the vocal Bible. Like we are gonna fight on our first show now. And see,
I love Brandy,
okay,
but
we got to
again,
save that. We got to save it. So, why don't you tell the people, AMC, what can they expect from the Gibson Gazette podcast? What's going to be like the format, and what is the request we have of them?
oh, okay. So for the format, my peoples, we are going to start with. Let me see if I have it here. We are going to do a couple of different topics. Actually, not a couple, but a few. So we're looking at loving it. So we're going to open the show with a positive story that both LMG and I loved from news, whatever it is. We're going to pull it and discuss it from our perspective. After that, we're going to hit you with it's complicated. So it's going to be a story that, excuse me, we both have mixed feelings about. So we love certain aspects we don't. And then we're going to come together and give you our thorough critique about what we're discussing. And lastly, just say no. Just no. So that's our last topic. And that, of course, is where we're going to come in with the harsh critiques that you guys love and are going to be speaking about for days to come and are going to want to listen to the podcast again the week after to see what we're coming with again. Lastly, this is where you guys come in. We definitely want to hear from you. I'm sure you've seen LMG's post and some have seen my post, but we are soliciting for stories from you guys. We want to hear your stories, your tantalizing and hood rat, because somebody was saying they had a hood rat story. I said, share it. Share it all. We want to hear the uplifting, the depressing. We want to go through different stories and waves with you guys. So we want you guys to share it with us, and we're going to discuss it online. Online on the podcast. We're going to discuss it on the show, and you're going to tell us whether you think it is true or not, or we're going to tell you. So I'm sure that alone, we're going to get some interesting stories to take a look at and discuss. I'm sure. I'm sure.
No, I have no doubt. And folks, again, make sure you tell us at the very end of the story, for Anne-Marie and I, or AMC and I, for to just let us know whether or not the story is true or false. We're gonna leave it, you know, a little bit of a space for the audience to say whether or not they think it's true or false, and they can say so in the comment section, and then we'll let you know whether or not it's true or false. But we definitely want an episode, an element of suspense about the show, about the stories that you share with us. The other thing I want to say is, do not send us no books. Don't send us your novels. Don't send us your short stories. One page max. We want like 1 or 2 paragraphs, 1 page max. You know, this is a time in which, you know, everybody's into brevity. Nobody likes long things. That's why, Emery and I cut our questions because we're like, oh, that would have gone 2 hours. We got 2 hours. So, yeah, we want to make sure that we are not spending 30 minutes on that story. We have like a 15-minute segment for that story. So give us a page. If it hints over a page and a quarter or something like that, we ain't gonna throw it out. We also are not reading every story. We imagine we'll get tons of stories at a certain point. We'll have to use our gifts of discernment to say what stories we want to bring to you. Don't get mad at us if we don't pick your story. There might have been lots of different reasons, or it might be something we share in the future. So
Right.
the other thing I want to note is while the show is going to be every 2 weeks, so be looking for our show every 2 weeks on Saturdays. We should be launching at 3 p.m. On Saturdays. Y'all can start sending us notes and stuff when we're running late. But we also are going to use Twitter Spaces in the week in between shows. So you can have a conversation with us live. We'll talk about stuff that's happening in the news. It may be just me or maybe Anne-Marie, maybe both of us. But we're wanting to make sure that we're touching space with you in the in-between weeks, particularly as, maybe as a really heartbreaking story, amazing story that y'all want to hear our perspective on. We're going to talk about it there. That's going to be more off the cuff, not as scripted, not as polished. We both might get a little bit more ratchet there. So visit us on Twitter Spaces for, and, obviously subscribe to the podcast show. We probably should make sure we say that in the intro too. Note to Chris. But like and subscribe. Every place online in the universe where our Gibson Gazette or at Gibson Gazette or the Gibson Gazette, but usually at Gibson Gazette. And Gibson is GIP as in Paul, SON Gazette. So not with a B, with a P.
Yep. Not Gip.
Not Gip. But, I grew up listening to my mother have to explain that to every single school I ever went to. It's GIP as in Paul, SON. So that is embedded on the brain. So anyway, that's our first show, I think. Anne-Marie, you have anything else?
You know what? The only thing I will add is your stories when you send them in and when we speak about them. We will not be listing you as Katrina so-and-so from so-and-so. It will be an anon story. And your names will be changed to save face and the yada, yada, yada. That's our disclaimer. So make sure, just to let you know, make sure your name and stuff is on it. It doesn't have to be really, but when we talk about it, it will be an anon story unless you want all your business to be out there for the people then. So that's up to you.
Yes, yeah. We'll try to protect the innocent, the good, and the evil. And I think that's it. Again, subscribe, share this podcast with your friends. Help us build an audience. You demanded this, and we are delivering it. So hopefully, you will help to grow us. And we're also open to recommendations and thoughts. Though keep in mind, we are growing and evolving on the shoestring budget as we put this together, and so we will get better as we grow and as the coins come in. Right. Yeah, we're gonna manifest ads. How about we manifesting some ads? That's what we're gonna manifest.
That's right.
Some sponsors, some paid sponsors. We're manifesting that for Gibson Gazette. Anyway, thank you all, and remember, everything in life is story. What stories are you telling yourself?